Yeah, I think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit.
This morning at 7:48, Prince William shattered years of silence with words so devastating, the world stopped. What he just confirmed about Meghan's future has left everyone in absolute shock. Insiders are calling it the most brutal royal statement in modern history. Palace staff reportedly stood frozen. International news interrupted their broadcasts. And when you hear what William actually said, you'll understand why this changes everything. What pushed the future king to this unthinkable breaking point?
But they are great teachable moments. And so I think some of the confessions that I have shared on the show include.
For years, William had remained strategically quiet about the ongoing situation with his brother and sister-in-law. When statements were issued, they came through official palace channels, carefully worded by communications teams, cushioned with diplomatic language that left room for interpretation. But this was different. This statement carried William's name directly, which is something that rarely happens unless the matter is of extraordinary importance. Within minutes of the statement going live, newsrooms around the world began reacting. The BBC interrupted its regular programming schedule. A royal correspondent with nearly 3 decades of experience covering the family read the statement on air twice before pausing to address viewers directly. According to reports from that broadcast, the anchor stated that this was unprecedented, that the Prince of Wales had just confirmed that Meghan would never return to the royal fold in any capacity whatsoever. Sky News pulled together an emergency panel of analysts and former palace insiders. There was a moment of what observers described as stunned silence before one panelist, a former palace press secretary, offered their assessment. The consensus among those with knowledge of royal protocol was clear. When William speaks in his own voice about a sensitive family matter, it means the issue has moved beyond negotiation. This wasn't a warning or a boundary being set. This was, as one analyst put it, a verdict. Across the Atlantic, where the east coast of the United States was just beginning to wake up in the pre-dawn hours, news alerts started lighting up phones and tablets. CNN's breaking news banner scrolled with the essentials. Prince William confirms no return for Meghan Markle. CBS News described the statement as the most definitive royal announcement in modern memory. Within 15 minutes of its release, the confirmation had been shared more than 200,000 times across various social media platforms. Outside Kensington Palace itself, journalists who had been stationed there for routine coverage suddenly found themselves at the center of a major story. One reporter, standing in the cold December morning air, described the atmosphere to her camera crew. She noted that you could feel something in the air, that this wasn't speculation anymore, that this wasn't palace insiders suggesting possibilities. This was the future king personally confirming that a former working royal would never be welcomed back. According to her assessment, nothing quite like this had happened before, at least not in this particular way. Inside the palace walls, according to sources familiar with the situation, senior staff went about their duties with what was described as an almost eerie calm. They had known this confirmation was coming. They had been part of drafting the language, refining the tone, preparing for the storm of media attention that would inevitably follow. But even for those who had been involved in the process, seeing it released, seeing William's name attached to words that would fundamentally alter the monarchy's relationship with one of its most controversial recent figures, brought a certain sobering clarity to the day. What struck many long-time royal observers, particularly those who had covered the family through decades of various scandals and eventual reconciliations, was the complete absence of what's known as hedge language. Previous statements about the Sussexes had always included phrases like "at this time," or "currently," or "under present circumstances." These phrases serve a purpose. They leave doors slightly open, they maintain the possibility that situations might change as time passes. This statement contained none of that. It used future tense language that eliminated any possibility of reinterpretation down the line. For older viewers in Britain, especially those who remembered the turbulent Diana years and the various reconciliations that followed different royal crises over the decades, William's confirmation felt almost shocking in its permanence. The British monarchy has historically operated on a principle of leaving doors at least partially open, of maintaining the idea that time and changing circumstances could heal what conflict had broken. Reconciliation, however distant, was usually presented as theoretically possible, but not this time. This time, William had personally ensured that this particular door would remain not just closed, but locked. In the United States, where Meghan's story had always carried deeper cultural significance and resonance, the reaction was immediate and notably divided. Morning show hosts began debating whether William's confirmation represented justified institutional protection or unnecessarily cruel family rejection. Social media erupted with supporters on both sides, but beneath all the noise and the competing narratives, one truth seemed undeniable to most observers. The future King of England had just publicly, personally, and permanently severed any possibility of Meghan's return to royal life. The question that began circulating almost immediately was obvious. What exactly had pushed William to take this extraordinary step? What combination of pressures, provocations, and breaking points had accumulated to force a man widely known for his careful deliberation and measured responses to speak so directly and so finally? Royal commentators and historians began pointing out that William doesn't act impulsively on matters of this magnitude. The statement that went out at 7:48 that morning wasn't a reaction to a single event. It was, according to those familiar with palace operations, the culmination of months of escalating tension that had finally reached a threshold that even legendary royal patience could no longer absorb. The timing itself was notable. December is typically when the royal family begins preparing for the holiday season, a period that usually sees a reduction in official announcements and controversial statements. The fact that William chose this moment to issue such a definitive confirmation suggested that the matter could no longer wait, that whatever had been building through the autumn months had reached a point where clarity became more important than maintaining the appearance of family harmony during the festive season. As the statement continued to circulate through the day, generating countless articles, opinion pieces, and broadcast segments, one thing became increasingly clear. This wasn't just another chapter in an ongoing story. This was William drawing a line, establishing a boundary, and making absolutely certain that there would be no ambiguity about where things stood going forward. The future relationship between the Crown and the Duchess of Sussex had indeed been conclusively determined, and William had put his name to that determination in a way that left no room for doubt or reinterpretation. To understand why William felt compelled to issue his confirmation on that December morning, it's necessary to look back at the autumn months of 2024, when a series of escalating pressures began to converge in ways that the palace could no longer manage through silence or traditional diplomatic approaches. Because what William released wasn't an impulsive reaction to a single incident. It was the result of careful deliberation that had been pushed to its absolute breaking point. Throughout September and October, Catherine had become increasingly troubled by a pattern she could no longer dismiss as mere coincidence. Every time she launched a major initiative, every time she appeared at a significant public engagement, articles would surface within days suggesting internal conflict, staff dissatisfaction, or personal struggles. The articles never cited credible or verifiable sources. Instead, they relied on vague phrases like palace insiders or those close to the situation. But their timing was too precise, too consistent to be accidental or random. During a private meeting at Kensington Palace in early November, Catherine finally voiced her concern directly to William. According to sources familiar with the conversation, she told him that someone was coordinating these stories. She had reviewed a timeline that showed 10 separate negative articles appearing within 48 hours of her major announcements over the previous 3 months. This wasn't organic media coverage, she explained. This was strategic interference, and it was affecting her ability to do her work effectively. William had suspected as much for several weeks, but hearing Catherine articulate it with such clarity and supporting evidence hardened something inside him. His wife had spent years building a reputation grounded in genuine service, dignity, and authentic commitment to causes she cared deeply about. Watching her work be consistently undermined by what appeared to be coordinated media manipulation was no longer something he was willing to tolerate or ignore. King Charles, meanwhile, was facing his own mounting frustrations during this same period. Throughout October, he had received multiple briefings showing that Sussex-related media cycles were consuming disproportionate amounts of palace resources. Communications teams were spending hours each week responding to false narratives and correcting misinformation. Legal advisors were reviewing potential defamation issues and assessing risks. Security teams were constantly evaluating threats created by inflammatory social media content. And through it all, Charles was trying to navigate the early years of his reign while managing health concerns that required more rest and less stress than his demanding schedule typically allowed. During one particularly difficult conversation at Clarence House, Charles admitted to a trusted aide that he felt trapped between his love for Harry and his responsibility to the institution he now led. According to accounts of that conversation, he said he wanted to believe reconciliation was possible, but he could not allow that hope to paralyze the monarchy's ability to function effectively. It was a painful admission from a father who had always tried to maintain connections with both his sons. The turning point came in mid-November with a security briefing that shook even the most experienced palace officials. Intelligence services had identified a concerning pattern of online activity targeting Catherine specifically. While most of it fell into the category of typical social media hostility that all public figures face, some content had crossed into territory that required formal security assessment. Threats were being monitored, misinformation campaigns were being actively tracked, and the volume of coordinated negative messaging had reached levels that security professionals described as unprecedented for a working royal in the digital age. William received this briefing in a small, secure room at Kensington Palace. According to those present, he read through the documentation slowly, his expression growing darker with each page he reviewed. When he finished reading, he looked up at the security director and asked one direct question. How much of this traces back to pro-Sussex accounts? The answer, delivered carefully but honestly, confirmed what William had suspected. A significant percentage of the coordinated negative activity could be traced back to accounts that actively supported the Sussexes and promoted their narrative. Perhaps the most damaging pressure came from an unexpected source. International partners and diplomatic counterparts began expressing concerns through official channels. The Foreign Office had been receiving discreet inquiries from diplomatic contacts in Washington, Ottawa, and Canberra. The questions were always phrased delicately, as diplomatic communications typically are, but the underlying concern was unmistakable. The ongoing Sussex drama was complicating the monarchy's ability to serve as a stabilizing cultural and diplomatic force on the world stage. One senior American official, speaking off the record to a British counterpart, had apparently expressed concerns about whether the Crown was stable enough to be a reliable partner in international matters. That feedback reached William through official channels in late November. For a man who understood that his future role would require maintaining complex international relationships built on trust, consistency, and stability, the message was devastating. The Sussex situation wasn't just creating tabloid headlines anymore, it was actively undermining Britain's soft power and diplomatic standing. Princess Anne, observing all of this with her characteristic clear-eyed pragmatism, finally told William directly what she had been thinking for months. According to sources close to the conversation, she told him that he could not protect everyone. At some point, she explained, he would have to choose between the individual who kept creating instability and the institution that served millions of people. That choice, she suggested, should not be difficult for someone in his position. As November progressed toward December, William found himself surrounded by evidence that could no longer be ignored or explained away. There were coordinated attacks on his wife's reputation and work. There was strain on his father's health during a critical period of his reign. There were security concerns that required constant monitoring and resources. There were diplomatic complications that threatened Britain's international standing and relationships. Each pressure point alone might have been manageable through traditional means. Together, they formed a picture that demanded decisive action rather than continued patience. The legal team added another layer of complexity to the situation. They had been conducting a comprehensive review of potential future risks associated with continued ambiguity about the Sussex relationship with the Crown. Their findings, presented in a confidential briefing to William and Charles, were sobering. Without a clearly defined relationship status, the palace faced ongoing exposure to multiple categories of risk. There were legal risks if the Sussexes made claims about informal agreements or expectations. There were security risks if their status remained undefined during international visits. There were reputational risks if their commercial activities created conflicts with royal associations. And there were constitutional risks if questions arose about their standing during future succession transitions. The legal director's summary was blunt and unambiguous. The longer this ambiguity persisted, the greater the institutional vulnerability became. They strongly recommended formalizing the separation in terms that would eliminate future disputes about standing, access, or association with the Crown. William reviewed the legal assessment over several days. The conclusion was inescapable. maintaining vague boundaries out of hope for eventual reconciliation was actually creating more risk than a clean, definitive separation would. It was a painful realization, but it was also clarifying. The Foreign Office concerns emerged from polling data and feedback from key allied nations. In all of them, awareness of royal family dysfunction had increased significantly over the past year. More troubling was that confidence in the monarchy as a stabilizing institution had decreased among opinion leaders and policymakers, the very people whose support mattered most for diplomatic relationships. The Foreign Office wasn't demanding any specific action, but they were making clear that the situation had moved beyond being merely a family matter. It had become a foreign policy concern, and that meant the government politely but firmly expected some form of resolution. And so, as winter settled across London and the palace prepared for what should have been a peaceful holiday season, William made his decision. The time for hoping that circumstances would naturally improve had passed. The time for drawing permanent, unambiguous boundaries had arrived. The evidence was overwhelming, the risks were mounting, and the cost of continued ambiguity had become too high for the institution to bear. The meeting that would finalize William's confirmation took place on the evening of December 1st inside a small private study at Windsor Castle. The room was cold despite the fire burning in the hearth, and the December darkness pressed against the windows. This was not a gathering of the full royal family. This was a strategic council limited to those who would have to defend and implement whatever decision emerged from the discussion. William arrived first, as he often did for important meetings. He carried a single folder containing the draft statement his team had prepared. According to those familiar with the situation, he had read it countless times over the previous 48 hours, refining words, testing implications, ensuring that every phrase carried exactly the meaning he intended. This statement would have his name attached to it. It would define his approach to family conflict for the rest of his reign and beyond. It had to be absolutely right. Charles entered quietly, looking older than he had just weeks earlier. The weight of the decision ahead showed in his face, in the way he moved, in the heaviness that seemed to settle around him. He sat without speaking, and William recognized immediately that his father was struggling. This was not merely an institutional decision for Charles. It was a father watching his son's relationship become irreparable and knowing he could not stop it from happening. Princess Anne arrived next, her presence as steady and reliable as it had always been. She had advocated for this moment longer than anyone else in the family. She believed deeply and without reservation that institutions survived only when they protected themselves from continuous disruption. Personal feelings, however valid they might be, could not be allowed to paralyze necessary action. Her view was pragmatic rather than emotional, and everyone in the room knew it. Then Catherine entered, and her presence shifted something in the atmosphere. She rarely participated in these strategic meetings. Her role had always been to support William privately while maintaining public focus on her own work and initiatives. But tonight, William had asked her to be present, and she had agreed, understanding that whatever was decided would affect not just the institution, but their family directly and personally. William opened the meeting with characteristic directness. According to accounts of what was said, he told everyone present that before they proceeded, he needed them to understand that the decision they made that night would be permanent. There would be no softening later, no revisiting it when emotions cooled or circumstances changed. This had to be final and irreversible. Charles shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing immediately. Anne nodded once, her expression unchanged, already fully committed to the path she had long advocated. Catherine remained still, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze steady and calm. William continued, explaining that he had reviewed every alternative approach. Private communication through intermediaries, formal mediation, gradual boundary setting, time-based reassessment. None of them addressed the core problem, which was that the current ambiguity created constant instability that affected their ability to function as an institution. He slid the draft statement across the table for the others to review. Charles read it slowly, absorbing every word and implication. Then he passed it to Anne, who read it more quickly before passing it to Catherine. When all three had reviewed it, silence settled over the room like snow. The weight of what those 19 words would mean hung in the air. Catherine spoke first, her voice quiet but clear. According to those familiar with the meeting, she said that this would hurt Harry deeply, and that William knew that. William met her eyes and acknowledged that he did know that. But he also knew that continuing as they had been hurt their children, and hurt the institution his father had entrusted to them. He could not keep choosing the possibility of reconciliation over the reality of protection. Charles's voice, when he finally spoke, was thick with emotion. He told William that he understood the necessity, but that this felt like closing a door that should remain open, however slightly. William replied gently that the door had been used as a weapon. Every time they left it open, it became another opportunity for instability and disruption. He was not closing it out of anger, he explained. He was closing it because it was the only way to move forward effectively. Anne interjected with her characteristic bluntness. She told Charles that he could not govern a monarchy by hoping family dynamics would magically improve on their own. William was doing what Charles had taught him to do, she pointed out. He was putting the institution first, even when it cost him personally. It was the lesson every monarch had to learn, and William was learning it now. The room fell silent again. Catherine reached across the table and gently touched the draft statement. According to reports of the meeting, she said that the language was clear and direct. It did not attack anyone. It simply stated what would be. That, she suggested, was the right approach for something this significant. Charles leaned back in his chair, his eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, he looked at his eldest son with an expression that carried decades of complicated history. Pride mixed with sorrow, understanding mixed with regret. He told William that he had his support, not because he wanted this outcome, but because he trusted William's judgment. It was perhaps the most difficult thing Charles had said as king, giving his blessing to a decision that would formalize the separation between his two sons. William felt something tighten in his chest, but he kept his voice steady and composed. Then they would proceed, he said. The statement would be released the following morning at 7:48. It would carry his name directly, and it would end the uncertainty once and for all. The meeting concluded shortly after that exchange. As the others left, William remained in the study, staring at the draft statement that would soon reshape everything. In a few hours, these words would reshape his family, his future, and the monarchy's relationship with its most controversial former member. But he had reached the point where certainty, however painful it might be, felt less damaging than continued ambiguity and endless speculation. Catherine paused in the doorway, looking back at her husband. According to those present, she told him softly that he was making the right choice, even though it did not feel that way at the moment. William nodded once, acknowledging her support, then returned his gaze to the document that would change everything come morning. At precisely 7:48 on the morning of December 2nd, the statement went live across all official Kensington Palace channels. The future relationship between the Crown and the Duchess of Sussex has been conclusively determined. There will be no pathway for return. The world began to react within seconds. In California, where night still clung to the coastline, the notification reached Harry's phone at 4:48 in the morning local time. According to sources close to the situation, he woke to the vibration, read the statement in the darkness, and felt something inside him break. This was not palace bureaucracy speaking through careful diplomatic language. This was his brother, using his own name, personally confirming that Meghan would never be welcomed back into the family fold. Sources described Harry's reaction as devastated silence. He did not wake Meghan immediately. He simply sat in the dark, holding his phone, trying to process what William had done. When dawn finally came, when he finally showed Meghan the statement, her response was measured. She had prepared herself for many possible outcomes, but this one, delivered so personally by William, felt like a final judgment she had not fully anticipated. Back in London, the palace machinery moved with practiced efficiency. Communications teams fielded hundreds of inquiries within the first hour. Legal teams confirmed the statement's implications to those who asked. No future collaboration, no ceremonial role, no pathway for institutional return under any circumstances. Security teams adjusted protocols based on the newly defined relationship status. Inside Kensington Palace, William went about his morning duties with outward calm. Staff who saw him noted that he seemed neither triumphant nor sorrowful. He simply seemed resolved, as if he had crossed a threshold that could not be uncrossed and had accepted the finality of it. Catherine maintained her scheduled engagements, offering no public comment on the statement. But those who worked closely with her observed a subtle shift in her demeanor. She seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Charles spent the morning in private meetings, emerging only for necessary official duties. Those closest to him reported that he seemed sorrowful but accepting. He had authorized William's decision even though it pained him personally, and now he was living with the consequences of that authorization. As the December daylight faded over London and the full weight of William's confirmation began to settle across the global media landscape, a stark reality emerged for Meghan Markle. The future she may have imagined, the one where time and changing circumstances could eventually heal what conflict had broken, no longer existed. William had not simply closed a door. He had confirmed that no door would ever open again, and he had done so in the most public and permanent way possible. The practical implications are immediate and significant. Without any formal relationship to the Crown, Meghan loses access to the security coordination that comes with royal association. This is not a minor consideration. International travel becomes more complicated when you no longer have the backing of an institution with diplomatic relationships around the world. Commercial activities must be navigated without any institutional guidance or protection, meaning every business decision carries risks that would have been mitigated by palace advisors. And perhaps most painfully, the possibility of participating in any future royal events, even those involving her own children during significant family moments, has been explicitly eliminated by William's statement. Financial implications follow close behind the practical ones. While Meghan and Harry have built independent income streams through media deals, public speaking engagements, and various commercial partnerships, the complete severing of royal ties removes certain protections and considerations they may have relied upon, whether consciously or not. Contracts that assumed potential future royal involvement, however distant, must now be reassessed. Partnership opportunities that banked on maintaining some connection to the institution, even a strained one, have lost their foundation. The brand value that came from being associated with the British royal family, even in departure, has fundamentally shifted. But perhaps most significantly, William's confirmation removes any strategic ambiguity Meghan might have used in her own narrative building going forward. She can no longer position herself as someone who might return if circumstances changed or if the institution showed more flexibility. She can no longer suggest that reconciliation remains possible if only the palace would take certain steps or make certain accommodations. The future king has personally and publicly stated that no pathway exists. That statement becomes the historical record, and no amount of media campaigning or public relations efforts can alter it. For those who have followed Meghan's journey from American actress to British royal to independent public figure, this moment represents something profound and final. She came into the royal family as an outsider who believed she could modernize an ancient institution, that she could bring new perspectives and approaches to traditions that had remained largely unchanged for generations. She left when that belief collided with what she described as immovable tradition and institutional resistance. And now William has confirmed that the departure is permanent, that the institution has moved forward without her, and that it will continue to do so regardless of what she says or does in the future. Across British media, the reaction to William's confirmation was swift and largely supportive of his decision. Commentators praised William for providing clarity after years of speculation and ambiguity. Editorial boards argued that the monarchy needed definitive boundaries to function effectively in the modern era. Even outlets that had been sympathetic to Meghan's perspective acknowledged that William's statement had ended years of exhausting speculation and constant media cycles that served no one's interests. In the United States, the response was more conflicted and divided, as it had been throughout the entire Sussex saga. Morning shows debated whether William had been justified in his approach or unnecessarily cruel in his finality. Social media erupted with competing hashtags supporting both positions, with passionate advocates on either side arguing their interpretations. But beneath all the noise and the competing narratives, a consensus emerged among serious observers. Whatever one's personal sympathies might be, William's confirmation had fundamentally altered the landscape. This was no longer a paused relationship with possibilities for future reconciliation. This was a conclusion, stated clearly and without room for reinterpretation. By midday on December the 2nd, palace officials confirmed that no further statements would be issued on the matter. The palace position, as far as the crown was concerned, was now closed. Meghan's future would unfold entirely separate from the royal institution, and William, having made what many described as the most difficult decision of his public life so far, had drawn a line that would define his leadership approach for decades to come. Royal historians began contextualizing the decision within the broader sweep of monarchy history. Some pointed to previous moments when the institution had to make difficult choices about family members whose continued association posed risks to stability. Others noted that William's approach represented something new, a willingness to address family conflict directly and publicly, rather than through the traditional method of quiet management behind palace walls. The consensus among historians seemed to be that William had recognized something fundamental about operating a monarchy in the digital age. Ambiguity that might have been protective in previous eras had become corrosive in an age of constant media scrutiny and social media speculation. For the monarchy itself, William's decision marks a turning point in how it handles internal conflict in the modern era. Previous generations might have allowed ambiguity to persist indefinitely, believing that time and discretion would eventually resolve tensions or at least reduce their public visibility. But William clearly understands that in the digital age, ambiguity is not protective. It fuels endless speculation, creates opportunities for competing narratives, and prevents the institution from moving forward with clarity and purpose. Princess Anne, when asked by a journalist for comment during a public appearance later that day, offered only a slight smile and a brief response. "The statement speaks for itself," she said. It was a perfectly Anne response, saying everything by saying almost nothing, confirming through her tone and demeanour that the palace was unified in its position. Meghan, the path ahead is now entirely her own to define, free from the constraints and expectations of royal life, but also free from its protections and institutional support. She can build a life focused on the causes she cares about, without wondering whether palace officials might object or how her actions might affect a relationship that no longer exists. She can tell her story without calculating whether doing so might damage chances for future reconciliation. She can make choices based solely on her own judgment and values, rather than considering institutional implications. That freedom comes with a cost, certainly. The doors to royal events are closed. The possibility of her children having a relationship with their grandfather the king and their uncle the future king, in any official capacity, has been severely limited. The security and diplomatic support that comes with royal association is gone. But it is freedom nonetheless, the freedom that comes from clarity, from knowing exactly where things stand rather than existing in a state of perpetual uncertainty. As December settles over both London and California, separated by thousands of miles and vast differences in perspective, one truth stands absolute and unchangeable. William has confirmed what many suspected, but few dared to state plainly. Meghan's royal future ended not gradually through a series of small steps, but definitively through a single clear statement. Not with continued negotiation or the possibility of changing circumstances, but with a final verdict delivered personally by the man who will one day be king. The statement that went out at 7:48 on that December morning will be studied by royal historians, analysed by constitutional experts, and debated by the public for years to come. But its meaning is not ambiguous or open to interpretation. The future relationship between the Crown and the Duchess of Sussex has been conclusively determined. There will be no pathway for return. 19 words that changed everything, spoken by a future king who had finally decided that clarity, however painful, was better than endless uncertainty.